Made in China. Made in the Czech Republic. Made in California. Those of you who last summer purchased the Beach Boys' 60th anniversary Sounds of Summer set on vinyl got these really nice picture sleeves with almost all of the major Beach Boys albums on them. 28 of the 29 main studio albums, a few live albums, a couple of the main greatest hits compilations and whatnot. A pretty good selection. I have a video where I talk about all the typos on these. A great idea ruined by a kind of haphazard execution. But I do really like these. But you might notice something about them. When we get to the 90s section here, you can clearly see the Beach Boys' 30th anniversary box set, 30 Years of Good Vibrations, prominently featured at the bottom, next to Summer in Paradise. But if you look in the 2010 section, although we see the new studio album, That's Why God Made the Radio, and the 2013 live album, we do not see what was intended to be the Beach Boys' big 50th anniversary celebration, the career-spanning box set, Made in California. So in my video on the Good Vibrations set from 1993, I pointed out that this set still has a pretty big following. A lot of people still buy it secondhand. A lot of people have nothing but positive things to say about it. It has a rare 5-star review on the Beach Boys Guide and so on. And it's a big fan favorite. Made in California, which should have replaced this set, is not a fan favorite. So today we're going to take a look at what's actually on Made in California and maybe see some of the reasons both why it was criticized when it came out and why it hasn't superseded Good Vibrations as the best Beach Boys career-spanning set. Now, of course, the Beach Boys have so much stuff that it's virtually impossible to make a set that actually covers their entire career. So, Made in California is doing the best it can with the space it has available. One of my big issues about it is it's one of the first releases to use disc holders. You might be able to see the outlines. I always take my CDs out of these, but this was kind of a wave, I should say kind of a premonition, would be better for the future. The wave wouldn't come just yet, but newer sets like Feel Flows and Sail on Sailor also use those instead and save money on jewel cases. Instead you just slide the disc down into the slots, but sometimes they're not always the best fit. But the book itself that Made in California is featured in is actually pretty nice. I like it a lot. First page, we got some signatures. I'm just going to show you a few kind of random pages because there's a lot to unpack there, but we get some great photos, some of which I think are exclusive to this book. We get an essay Brian Wilson wrote in high school called My Philosophy, which is really neat to read. It's both some candid photos and some more professional ones. There's an article from 1966 about pet sounds, which is reprinted in here. There are a few interview bits too there, where they ask Beach Boys specific questions and they answer them. Or they talk about, the creation of different songs or albums or what have you. Some pet sound stuff there. Sports with Friends, 1968. Some advertisements for Beach Boys related businesses like the Radiant Radish and whatnot. Sure, at least some of these are intended to be gags, but some of them are legitimate places, so I don't know. And it ends with a pretty comprehensive set of liner notes there talking about where certain tracks came from, where certain mixes came from, and whatnot. Again, festooned with some really nice photos. One of the purposes of the set was to commemorate the lives of the two Beach Boys we've lost, Dennis and Carl. So they have a nice page to honor them. And they have, special thanks sections at the end there. Talk about different people who've contributed either to the making of the album or the packaging or whatever there. So it's a pretty nice looking box set. I will say an issue I have with the packaging is it came in shrink wrap, and the complete track list here was shrink wrapped to the back of the package, so it kind of fit on. So if you bought it in the store, the front would kind of look like that. You flip it over and this would be attached. Let that person go by. But I kept this insert. There's no way to open the package and actually, you know, get the CDs and stuff without taking the shrink wrap off. So here's the complete track listing there. The Wikipedia page has a few errors. It claims some things are previously unreleased when they're not. We'll talk more about that as we go. So there's too much stuff here for me to sit. Usually I sit and read the track lists and stuff for you, but I'm not going to do that today because there's just too much on Made in California. It would take me a very long time to read all of those. So I thought, we'll just kind of go through and hit the highlights of each CD. Each CD has at least one exclusive or fairly rare item. So we'll take a look, see at that. So we'll start at the beginning there. Disc number 1. So disc 1 covers 1961 through 1965. Interestingly, this set uses the same opening and closing tracks as 2001's Hawthorne, California set there, but they re-edit them. They add in like pieces of the song California Feelin. We'll come back to that and whatnot. So they're kind of exclusive edits, not really exclusive tracks, but they keep the intro. You know, this is Mike Love on our first Radio Luxembourg show. There are a few things that are kind of rare, such as Their Hearts Are Full of Spring 1963 version. That was only available on the previous box set, that kind of thing. You know, there's an audition take of Lonely Sea, which is mono and extended a little bit, that kind of thing. Really the only exclusive things, though, are Surfer's Rule with a session before it, and that session remains exclusive to this release. It's either Murray Wilson or Chuck Britz telling the Beach Boys how to play their guitars, that kind of thing. Very short, and of course the song Surfer's Rule from the Surfer Girl album there. And the only other really exclusive thing is the 1963 version of Back Home. Back Home would kind of come back into favor on and off throughout their career. There are a few different versions of it on the big Feel Flows. This is the little Feel Flows. But it's kind of nice to see this song that wasn't officially released until 1976, but was attempted several times before. It's cool to see what's probably the earliest version on this set, and it remains exclusive to this one. So you can only get the original 1963 Back Home here. There are a lot of bits of this album that are mixed differently because they're pulled from different sources. For example, we have mixes from 2007's Warmth of the Sun, 2009's Summer Love Songs, we have some brand new mixes, there are a few mono edits in here, and this was one of the big issues people took with this album, was that there were so many different source tapes and mixing choices, and they're all over the place. Some we've heard before, some we haven't, some are mono, some are stereo, and people were kind of like, you know, pick a lane. This is supposed to be a complete look at the Beach Boys. You know, they've never done like a mono box set versus a stereo box set like the Beatles have or something like that. But I know that was a criticism. And also, interestingly, while the set's generally in chronological order, the first disc changes up quite a bit near the end, I think just to kind of help the flow and to leave Dance, Dance, Dance as the last track, so Do You Wanna Dance can pick up disc 2. But they do flip-flop a few things. It's nothing major, but it is kind of noticeable. Several things, like the I Get Around sessions and whatnot that were new for this release, can be found on Keep an Eye on Summer. This came out the following year, 2014. Made in California was slated for a 2012 release, but not released till 2013. So this actually, which came out shortly afterwards, this actually served to negate some of the brand new stuff that was released the previous year. Other than that, though, disc 1, you know, mostly stuff that we're kind of familiar with. You know, the early loaded, or I should say the front-loaded early hits there. And we'll give you a look at the list there. Let's move on to disc number 2. Disc 2 covers 1965 to 1967, so we're talking like Today and Summer Days and Summer Nights up through Wild Honey. There's not a lot of exclusive stuff here either. Really the biggest thing of note is probably an early version of Amusement Parks USA. We don't have like a 1965 session box set or compilation or anything of that kind, so it's nice to see these few things that pop up when they do. You know, it's not a classic song, but it's neat to hear an alternate take. Some of the unplugged mixes, which would later be used on the Beach Boys Party Uncovered and Unplugged mixes, are used here also. It's not the first time we've seen some of them, but no doubt kind of predicating the release of the blue version of Party that you see down there. The 1993 set was very heavy on pet sounds content at over half the album. Made in California tones it back a little bit. We only get, I believe, 5 pet sound songs. And some of them use the 1990s mixes. I think Wouldn't It Be Nice is the only one that doesn't. So that's a little bit different there. Not too heavy on pet sounds, probably because they figure by 2013 a lot of people have that album. Sometimes that's a person's only Beach Boys album. And not too heavy on Smile, because you remember, in 1993, when that last box set was released, there wasn't a lot of legitimate Smile stuff floating around. In 2011, on the eve of the 50th anniversary, we got the Smile sessions. Smile was released to vinyl. There's the big box set, which I'll do a video on someday, but here's the little baby box set version of Smile that I bought back in the day, because I was in college when the Beach Boys 50th reunion happened, so I didn't have the money to fork out for the big one. But not a lot of stuff from Smile. In fact, you know, Heroes and Villains, with the 3-minute and 4-minute parts 1 and 2 are there. Vegetables, Wind Chimes, Cabinescence, a few things here and there, but nothing too crazy. Probably because they realized, you know, we can't say, oh wow, there's a lot of Smile stuff here, because there's new box sets came out, and people are going to be buying those to get the true blue Smile experience. And the Wild Honey stuff gets new mixes, that's pretty nice, but for the most part, there's not a lot of different stuff there on disc number 2. Moving on to disc number 3. I'll hold that up again for you. We have 1967 to 1971. There's a few interesting things here. Really nothing too crazy. Some songs like Susie Cincinnati got new mixes, but those have kind of been supplanted by even newer ones, like To Celebrate Feel Flows and whatnot. So I think some of them, like We're Together Again, are still exclusive to this set, but you wouldn't buy a set like this just for a new stereo mix of one song, I wouldn't think. Probably the coolest thing released is Sound of Free. If you watch my Summer Love Songs video, we talk about the song Lady, also known as Fallen in Love. Big Dennis Wilson single, but never really caught on, was only released in the UK, or at least parts of Europe. Here we get it, the 2009 mix, along with its B-side, Sound of Free, which kind of makes its CD or digital debut, and that's a really nice track. I'm glad they included that here as a kind of a celebration of Dennis. We also see for the first time the extended version of Meant for You. Meant for You is really the shortest kind of regular Beach Boys song, or at least one that was released as a finished product in about 40 seconds. It's nice to see the longer version here, even though I actually like the shorter version better. The longer version is kind of ropey lyrics. We have a quick clip of Can't Wait Too Long. We have the same alternate take of Breakaway that was on the Hawthorne, California release. The session and everything is still kept. So, not a lot of new stuff there. A couple odds and ends like new mixes of Sailplane and We're Together Again, but nothing crazy. CD 4, I think, is where we start to get kind of creative, because a lot of the songs that were really pushed to market this new release are on the 4th disc. So we get through all the Sunflower stuff on disc 3, there's quite a bit of that, and the Surf's Up stuff is split between 3 and 4, but one of the big draws was Dennis Wilson's Wouldn't It Be Nice to Live Again, this unreleased Dennis song, very beautiful, intended for Surf's Up, but was pulled because the rest of the group wouldn't put it where Dennis wanted it, so it was taken off. This uses the shorter version. Some copies of Feel Flows have the longer one, but the shorter one I think was also released on the extended version of the Sounds of Summer box set. I believe they used the short one. You know, it's a good track to have and a wise choice for marketing this new release. One criticism that was kind of levied against this album was a lack of material from kind of that mid-70s period. We have 2 songs from Carl and the Passions and 3 from Holland, and that's it. That's pretty skimpy. I know there was a complaining review online, where are the Holland outtakes? Well, there aren't a lot of those, as Sail on Sailor showed us, but you know, they didn't do a lot with that era. You know, granted, it wasn't a huge focus of the previous box set, but at least we got an exclusive new track and a couple, you know, uncommon ones from the era to sort of flesh that part out. But Made in California skips through that pretty quick. Also, it makes me mad because it claims it uses the single version of California Saga. It uses the album version. If you watch my rants on Sailor, you'll know that that bothers me. 15 Big Ones, the group's album in 1976, their big comeback album when they became popular again, also gets pretty short shrift, but 2 of the tracks included were brand new for this set. There's an extended version of Rock and Roll Music, which I really like. It's actually one of my most listened to tracks on this set, where Mike Love does the verse the Beach Boys usually skip. You know, don't care to hear him play a tango, not in the mood to hear a mambo, it's way too early for the Congo. I like that. He does a good job on that too. 10 Years of Harmony actually prints those lyrics on the lyric insert, but does not include the version of him singing them. So what I thought was a typo for years was maybe just an oversight. Maybe they wanted to introduce that back in the 80s. And the alternate take of It's Okay makes its debut here. It'd pop up on the extended Sounds of Summer as well. It has a little synthesizer intro. I like that a lot. Get a good selection of stuff from 1977's Beach Boys' Love You. We get an alternate version of It's Over Now. A different take was used here. So the mix used here is exclusive to the first box set. The mix used on this set is exclusive to it. Same song, different versions. And then we get California Feelin, an outtake from the late 70s. And really one of the highlights of the album, I think. It wasn't the first time this song had ever been released. Brian Wilson did a solo version for his album, Classics, selected by Brian Wilson. He did with his backing band. But I really like that it's here, the original Beach Boys version. There was a music video. It was a big part of the promotional campaign. Like I said before, it was added to the opening and closing tracks of this album, which were repurposed for Made in California. Get an alternate take of Brian's Back, and we also get a few LA Light album tracks, which I always like because I enjoy the LA Light album. It's a Beautiful Day gets a new mix. It uses the same basic one as the 10 Years of Harmony release. It just kind of extends a little bit. And Goin' to the Beach, which was an outtake from about 1980 that Mike Love really liked, and I guess he fought for its inclusion here. But he actually did that song live after the tour ended, and he was with Bruce and occasionally David Marks again. They did that one live, and I wish I could see Goin' to the Beach live, because I think that'd be pretty fun. Disc 5 is kind of the last regular disc of the set. And this one is where the bulk of my criticisms lie. Disc 5 covers 1980 to 2012 with 10 tracks. We have 1 song from Keepin' the Summer Alive, going on of course. We have 2 outtakes from 1979, 1980. To Do Ron Ron was intended for Keepin' the Summer Alive. Apparently Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love wasn't, but I don't know what that was for if it wasn't for that album. We have Get You Back and California Dreamin', 2 of their mid-80s, at least minor successes. Kokomo, of course. 2 early 90s outtakes, Soul Searchin', which Brian Wilson would later release solo on his Gettin' In Over My Head album, and You're Still a Mystery, and then 2 songs from the new album, That's Why God Made the Radio. And that's it. 10 songs to cover, you know, over 30 years. It's like, dude, you know. Nothing from Summer in Paradise, of course. Yeah, it's nice we get outtakes, but I really think they could have fleshed that out. No Still Cruisin', that was in their live set. You know, it's like, come on. And then the back part of the last disc there is Beach Boys Live, and they kind of highlight it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on here, but they do kind of highlight that as a separate section. And tracks 11 through 25 are all different live performances from different eras of the group's career. A lot of the earlier ones we've seen on other releases since. Some remain exclusive to this. Interestingly, the 1993 set had very little content in terms of live stuff. I believe only had 6 live tracks. 4 from Sacramento in 1964, their Take of Good Vibrations from one of the shows at University of Michigan in 1966, and then a live in studio Surfer Girl, which you might not even want to count. So I'm glad that they actually decided to throw some live, more live material, I should say, more live material into Made in California. A few things, of course, we've seen since. Runaway 1965, that was released on the digital download live in Chicago. They added on the old Millstream radio intro into that. The Letter is put here, and The Letter, of course, was part of the Late in Hawaii show and the Hawaii concert stuff. We've talked about that before. But it says it's a rehearsal take from August the 25th, but it actually sounds more like just one of the studio versions. I don't think that that's a new exclusive track here. We have 2 tracks from Chicago, 1968. Those have been released on Beach Boys on Tour, 1968, the digital set, as has All I Want to Do. But interestingly enough, the original version on Beach Boys Rarities ran only about 1.5 minutes. This runs the full song. They actually did something Brad Elliott wanted to do back in the 80s, edited on a different ending to this performance so it actually ends. All I Want to Do just kind of trails off on the original 80s album. So we get a re-edit of an older track. That's pretty neat. And Only With You from Carnegie Hall pops up, and we saw that last fall on Sail on Sailor. We get some cool stuff though. There's a really fun live take of Summer in Paradise. We get Wonderful and Vegetables from the New York Unplugged show at the Paramount Theater. And we get a few odds and ends like It's About Time. It's a pretty nice selection. It's eclectic, but I think it works. And it's not the full extent of the live material that we'll see on this set either, because our last disc, CD6 from the vaults, is kind of a collection of stuff. It doesn't go in chronological order. Unlike disc 1, which just kind of flipped a few things here and there, disc 6 is all over the place. It is a fun listen though. I will say, there's a lot of interesting things here. Some of this stuff we've seen since or even before it was released, I should back up and say that. The radio ads were all on previous sets. The Good Vibrations sessions were on a previous set. The Smile backing vocal montage, that was on the Smile box set. You know, we've seen some of these things before. Others have been released since, sometimes in new mixes, sometimes basically the same. But if you look at things like Mona Kana, that was re-released in 2018 with a new mix. The Don't Go Near the Water backing track, that's been re-released. The Late in Hawaii takes of California Girls and Help You Rhonda have been released. Interestingly, this set correctly refers to it as Help You Rhonda. The 2017 box set still calls it Help Me Rhonda. I can't imagine doing that live, having to change one word. That would screw everybody up. I don't know. You know, some of the Surf's Up recordings there, the Smile Era recordings, we will see otherwise or other places. But then there are a few things that are unique to this set that still haven't been released. Their cover of You've Lost That Love and Feelin is a good example. That's not available anywhere else. Dennis Wilson's My Love Lives On, which fans really liked, that's exclusive to this set. We have 3 tracks from their first BBC show. We have Wendy, When I Grew Up to Be a Man, and Hushabye. A few more would be released the following year on Keep an Eye on Summer. But it's nice to have some of them here, and they're not the same ones, so this kind of complements this, if that makes sense. We have some Feel Flows outtakes. You know, at first I thought, okay, everything from the early 70s will be covered again on Feel Flows. But interestingly, Feel Flows doesn't feature the a cappella Slip On Through. It doesn't feature the a cappella This Whole World or the Our Sweet Love string section with voices, that kind of thing. This one has them like separated. This box set does one take that's strings and voices. Kind of neat there. And a few things are available in like different versions, like Back Home. The mix of Back Home is unique to this set. They use different ones on here and whatnot like that. And the track, I think it's Where Is She? Yeah, Where Is She? Has a different version on Feel Flows. So there's still some variety here, even if you maybe have a lot of the other releases. And there are things like the backing track that Had to Phone You. That's unique to this. Barnyard Blues by Dennis, that's unique. So a lot of cool stuff. Yes, it is all kind of odds and ends and all jumbled up together there, but honestly, it does its job. So why might people dislike Made in California? Well, the price tag could have something to do with it. I paid $96 for this in 2016. This was my gift to myself after my first year as a teacher. And it was still a little steep. It was well over $100 when it first came out, I know. And nowadays it costs about $200, $250 to buy it on Amazon. I'm assuming that's secondhand too, so it's not cheap. And it's kind of unbalanced in some ways. We skipped through the 90s almost completely. The 70s, you know, it's kind of here and there and whatnot. And of course later releases have negated some of its appeal, just as they kind of have in some ways with the 30th anniversary set. Of course, there are still tracks on the 30th anniversary set that you can't get anywhere else. So it's one of those things that just goes with the territory, I guess. But, you know, it's not as comprehensive as some fans wanted it because it does skip periods. Kind of expensive and kind of uneven, but all told, I really like Made in California. A cool package, a lot of unique stuff, and all in all, I think a very rewarding listen. I really got into listening to it again to prepare this video. So if you have thoughts on Made in California, please do comment them below, or if you have it in your collection. Pretty soon we'll be talking more about the Beach Boys' 50th anniversary. I hope you tune in for that. Always love to see you and hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Sayonara.